earlier.
Here's one I made 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 earlier.
Hello, Boy Peter fans, and welcome back to Here's One I Made Earlier. Yes, we are back with a very brand new series, a series that no one ever thought would get off the ground. It is definitely a corker of a title. Here's one I interviewed earlier, yes. But we're starting this series off at the highest level you can get, because you can always have to start at the very highest level. And my guest today is best known as one of the greatest Boy Peter presenters of all time. It's the one and only Janet Ellis.
Hello. That always used to be at the end of the Blue Peter Sig tune, you know, that sort of jolly hello that as the music faded away, we would all go hello and then introduce the program. So I'm kind of stuck with saying it like that.
And so we'll start at the very beginning, because Julie Andrews once said it's a very good place to start.
Very good place to start.
I must agree with her, it is. How did you get into the world of presenting in the first place?
Oh, by accident, actually, because I wanted to be an actress ever since I can remember, since I was a really tiny person. And nobody in my family had any connections with the business at all. They were really supportive. I mean, they liked the idea, but they didn't have a clue how to go about it. So I wanted to go to drama school, and I did. I went to what's now the Royal Central. It used to just be called Central, but now it's the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. And then was lucky enough when I left to leave with an agent, and 3 weeks later had my first job. So, you know, I was kind of headed to the Royal Shakespeare Society as far as I was concerned. And I worked as an actress for 5 years. But in amongst that, are you still awake? In amongst that, I did a kids program called Jigsaw, hooray, which won the first BAFTA for children's programs, actually, fact fans. And bits of that, little tiny bits of that, were to camera to give the address. It was a puzzle show, so I'd be doing loads of different characters with Adrian Headley, my co-host. But we'd have to announce, you know, to the camera the address to send and all that kind of stuff. And people started saying to me, "Oh, have you thought about presenting?" Which I actually thought was not very complimentary because I was an actress. But after a while, I started thinking, well, maybe it'd be good to do a bit, you know, to mix it up a bit. And of course, nowadays that's what people do. But then they didn't, you know, you were doing one or the other basically. But I went along to see an agent who looked after presenters, thinking a little bit, and she said, actually, I happen to know that Sarah Green is leaving Blue Peter. And initially I said, no. When I said a bit of presenting, that's really not what I meant. That's a lot of presenting. But she persuaded me to audition for the program, and in fact bet me £5 I would get the job, which was a lot of money in those days. But the minute I got in the studio, actually, and this sounds very twee, but the minute I got in the studio, it felt familiar to me. I mean, it was a live program, and we didn't have autocue in those days, so you learned a script. And Pete Duncan, who was on it with me, was also an actor, and Sarah had been. In fact, the list of people who were actors who became Blue Peter presenters is very, very long. Certainly was then. And it just felt, yeah, this could be good. And honestly, it was the loveliest job. It really was.
Yeah. And before you started working on Boy Peter, had you seen the program before? Because it had been going on for many, many years.
I had seen it, yeah, and it was already just coming up to its 25th birthday by the time I joined. But because my dad was in the army, we'd had several postings in Germany when I was little, so I hadn't seen it all the way through. It was an intermittent part of my childhood. But I don't think in those days you could be unaware of it. And even people who said they didn't watch it knew an awful lot about it.
Yeah.
Because, you know, there was Magpie or whatever on the other side, and Blue Peter was deemed to be the not very cool one. Yeah. And I would just say, where are those programs now?
Yeah. They always say the Magpie was edgy, but I think if you wash a gorilla in a bathtub, a Blue Peter, that is the most edgy thing you can do with your license fee. And because Blue Peter is a live program, and there's a lot to it. Do you reckon that you've learned a lot of skills from Blue Peter that you now use in everyday life?
I don't know about in everyday life, although probably, talking to people, if that's a skill, I don't know. Meeting enthusiasts was one of the joys of the program, actually, because everybody who came on the program really wanted to be there. They really wanted to tell you about something, and that's infectious. But it taught me presenting. Oh my goodness, yeah. And the chief reason for that, of course, was the amazing editor, Biddy Baxter, who has just become 91 years old. Because she had run the program really since the beginning. I mean, there was a little tiny moment when she wasn't there, but it was her baby, most definitely. And her biggest commitment was to the viewer. She didn't really care about much else, to be honest. And that's what made it good. And so she would never let you slip or slide. She was very faint with praise. I can't really remember any time she did, but that's okay, get that elsewhere. So it really kept me up to speed in terms of prioritizing what you're doing and who the audience is. And also her other big thing, which I certainly carried with me in every other presenting gig I've done since, is changing the mood according to the item. Something could have happened that involved, I don't know, bringing the Dagenham Girl Pipers in on 5 double-decker buses because they're big studios. And then we'd be talking about, a lost Jane Austen letter. And that's a different gear. And she was always very hot on that. And actually, I'm really great. She taught me presenting that program because I'd never done it before. And neither had 99% of it until Mark Curry appeared on the program with me. He'd done presenting before. None of the rest of us had. So we learned, sorry, audience, but we learned in front of you. But we had that teacher, who really watched, and would say after a program, if you'd slipped on something, what happened. And it was a real object lesson in that it's important, what you're saying and how it comes down with camera and appears in front of one person probably is important. So yeah, but I'm not sure in real life. Yeah. And I've certainly got no intention of parachuting again, just in case anyone ever thinks that's a good idea.
And why do you reckon that Blue Peter has stood the test of time and got the accolade of being the world's longest children's television program in the world?
I think, personally, it's because it stayed really true to its audience. It's aimed at 8 to 12-year-olds, which is quite a particular group. They're sort of, coming through the last bits of primary school, maybe going to the first bits of secondary school. And that program was specifically intended for them. And that's a particular tone, And it can become, I think, very tempting with a program that's been on the air for years, that you kind of adjust it to fit possibly an adult audience who will also be watching. They've got their appreciation societies in universities. I just don't know, so it doesn't ping again. The appreciation societies are all in universities. Of course they are, because it's comforting. It's part of your childhood. But it never went over the kids' heads. It just stayed true to that audience, which is, I think, also Biddy Baxter's legacy, that her thing was the viewer. And it's really important that child, which was kind of her, watching the program, feels that it's theirs. And just for that 25, 30 minutes, that's who it's for. And that's what I think anyway. I mean, it's obviously now viewing habits have changed so significantly, especially in the last 5 years, that it's lovely that it's still there. But, it's amazing. And I can only think that's the reason.
Yeah. And I think that when you watch the new episodes and then you remember the episodes you watched when you were a child, there's not a lot of difference. There's the odd differences because of technology and they wanting to include more. So like there's more likely to be an audience there than the
Exactly. Yeah.
But it helps. It hasn't just stuck where it was. It's moved with the times to make sure that it's still enjoyable for the kids that they're presenters and for them kids, not for anyone else. It's for that generation to remember them for years.
Yeah. And actually not long after I joined the program, probably about 6 months in, I went into the office because I used to go in, if I was doing a make, I would go in and just rehearse with the bits, so I'd seen them. And there was a script lying on a desk, and it was a script for Val, John and Pete. Yeah. Amazing, like an artifact, so I sort of picked it up and went, oh, I feel like, and they said, oh yeah, because we're doing the tortoise hibernation, and we want to make sure we get it just right, and they got it just right. So it was, I think childhood is built on a wonderful combination of intense regularity and then occasionally breaking out. And that's what Blue Peter reflected. There was a routine and a rhythm to it because it's dictated by the school year, by what you do, your holidays, your life is largely run by adults. And then all of a sudden somebody will say, yeah, but what about we go up in a hot air balloon? Or yeah, but maybe we'll go to the other side of the world. So it had this sort of structure to it, which was very comforting. So the program's rhythm hadn't really changed by the time I joined, certainly.
Yeah. And when you're out and about on the street, do you still get stopped by a wide variety of people and telling you stories of them as children watching Blue Peter?
Well, what's lovely, of course, is that the people stopping me now are like 50. They're very, they're nice. They've all turned out really well. I think it's mostly when people hear me talk, actually. So they would hear my voice and go, oh, right, oh, that takes me back. And I always think, were you actually in front of your television or just listening? But yeah, I think it is an amazingly nice thing to have been part of something which has no enemies. When people say, I used to love Blue Peter, so far, I'm touching a little bit of wood here. Nobody stopped me and said, you ruined my childhood. Blue Peter was the worst thing I'd ever seen. So far, it is this lovely thing of, it takes you to that place where the world was, yours for a little bit. And yeah, I'm not going to preach about it was a safe and better place. It certainly was not. It was not. But that program certainly reflected a good world, a world to grow up in. And that's a lovely gift, I think. It's amazing, actually, that, it had that reach. Because like I say, a lot of people who say, oh yeah, we didn't used to watch it, can still tell you pretty much chapter and verse what was going on in the program at the time. So there were either people who said we had to watch it because we weren't allowed to watch the other side, or people who could make a fair and lovely choice to watch us. But the short answer is, not many, obviously, because anyone under that sort of age is obviously just going to go, oh, are you Sophie's mum? That's fine. I am, and I like being that. But actually, I do a podcast called Twice Upon a Time, where I just ask people what their favorite childhood book was. And part of the reason for doing that is, first of all, I love reading and have done since I was really little. But also exactly that same thing, that when you're talking to people about that favorite book, you can see them little again. When there was no agenda, you could just like something. And even if people sort of mocked Blue Peter, if you liked it, you liked it, and it was yours. So, it is a really nice thing. It's an amazing thing to have been part of.
Yeah. And do you reckon that because you've interviewed a lot of people for the podcast, do you reckon that you because it's not like a traditional form of interview where you ask a certain question, do you reckon that it's helped you learn more about them in a special way because you've got them to unlock a certain memory and then they've remembered all these things and they've spilled out about their childhood in a specific way?
Well, I'm crossing my fingers as I speak, but yes, absolutely that. Absolutely. Because it is a time when, especially with reading, you had to read in school, you were told what to read and you were tested on it. But your favorite book is one that was yours. And yeah, what we do actually, we find a copy. If they don't have their original, we find a copy that is as near as possible to the one they would have read. So, it's got the same typeface and, looks and sounds and feels the same. And yeah, there's something really lovely about that. I mean, the intention is, as you know, these sorts of interviews are not, there's no agenda to them. You're not trying to get to a different truth. But I suppose what's nice is that when people talk about their childhoods, they go back and they can see it really clearly. And, not always brilliantly happy, of course, not everybody is. But especially when I ask them things like, where did you read? Did you have a favorite place? And they'll go, oh my God, yeah, there was that place in the top of the house, or, whatever it is. And I think it's great. Anyway, I have an immense curiosity about how people grew up. So it satisfies it in a rather long-winded way. But yeah, I think it does. And, again, we're not doing it for sort of clickbait, we're not going to that's the nugget, that's the thing we post, because it is to coin a modern phrase, a safe space. You know, it's just we put out the comfy chairs basically and say let's just have a chat, so people can reveal inadvertently, I suppose, because they're not talking about their latest book, play, film, TV series, or whatever. But that's not the intention. The intention is just a lovely way of talking, and also about the books, because I always love to read up about the people who've written the books, and children's authors sometimes were quite eccentric people. So it's rather good to compare the lovely things they put on the page with the rather amazing way they lived.
And it's one of those things that you see all these like famous people, the people that you admire from others, and like for instance Lorraine Kelly or Nick Mohammed, and you sort of see another side to him, and it makes him more heartwarming, because you know this person is like a really comical or a really great interview, but then you see the heartwarming side of them, and you're like, and you like the person more because you've learned like a personal thing about them that you wouldn't have thought you would want to know, but you just like fall in love with that.
Oh, well, if that happens, that is really lovely. That is really lovely. And the other lucky thing is that I work with two producers, one of whom is a very old friend, but is a radio producer of long standing, and with Hat-Trick, ditto. So we make kind of a long form radio program. I mean, obviously, as I was just saying, it doesn't have to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. The object of it is not to wrap up and come to some conclusion, and the conversation can go absolutely anywhere. But they have a weather eye on the fact that they don't want to spend ages at the top talking about what's your favorite sandwich. They don't want to spend ages in the middle talking about things which might be interesting, but actually for a listener are less than satisfying. So they're very strict, actually. I mean, they're nice, but they are strict about let's keep it consistent timing. You know, let's always do maximum 45 minutes. So we record for an hour, and then it gets edited. And I'm the better for it, actually, being aware for them. And I think that's because of the particular subject matter. You know, we have grounds to cover about the book, the person who's talking about the book, the author of the book, and the context of what it did for them and what the rest of their reading and possibly performing or whatever it is life happened afterwards. But I quite like the sort of the ring fencing of what I'm doing by two people who really care about it. You know, they really care about it, and it feels very, very, very challenging, which I like.
And one of the things you've done in more recent times is you've what was the inspiration behind your phenomenal book Butcher's Hook?
Goodness knows. Actually, I think I'll try not to be too long-winded about this, Tom, but I think because writing was the last thing, you know, like my third career, and actually the most precious in terms, it's just me. You know, I've always loved live television. I've always loved being in theatre. I've always loved things where everybody has equal responsibility. You know, that feels really good, like team playing. But if I'm honest, of course, you know, if you're in a team, it won't always be your fault. You know, you've got a lot of people to share stuff with. But with writing, it's really singular and it's very exposing. So I think having left it so long, having made several sort of false starts that I stopped, you know, nobody else got in the way and said, I don't think you should carry on. I was so nervous about it that I went a long way to making things really difficult for myself. But by the time I got to the point where I was, you know, thinking about this character and how she might behave, it actually felt more like acting, because I was just improvising on the page. When I had a vague idea of where the story might go, but I actually didn't know how it would end. And I also kept introducing characters that, you know, this sounds really kind of silly, but you know, sometimes the characters would take me by surprise. They sort of appear and I'd start writing them and think, yeah, let's see. So I felt incredibly free. I mean, I was much older than most debut novelists. I had already done stuff, and my most important thing for me was that I wanted to write a book that I wanted to read, you know, myself. I wanted it to be that sort of story, and I didn't really have anyone else to answer to. So I didn't, you know, if I'd been writing it 40 years ago when I was on Blue Peter. I think the dichotomy between that programme and what's in the book might have been a little hard, but I didn't. For obvious reasons, I didn't. And so I didn't have anyone to disappoint with what it was apart from me. So it did feel very liberating, really liberating. But it was kind of free in that I didn't have anyone looking over my shoulder and going, I don't think that's going to play well for you, you know, because it's quite, as you know, it's quite extreme. And you know, I can justify everything in the book, but I didn't feel restricted, which is great, you know. And you know, even with the second one, which was harder going in as much as it was a more difficult story to tell, you know. Now I'm laboring with book 3, but still the pressure is only mine, and I feel very lucky. I mean, I think that's because I'm not writing in a particular genre too. You know, I've got friends who are thriller writers, and rightly their readers finish a book and go right next. So they are writing to order, you know, they are writing to keep up with a demanding audience. But I didn't have that. I just kind of went, oh, here's the book, and let people think of it what they will.
Yeah. And do you reckon that because you also read the audiobook, do you reckon that it helped bring the story to life because with the Butcher's Hook, because you made sure that the listeners listened to it in the way that you had thought in your head, this is how I wrote it.
Well,
that helped make it more intimate and more immersive for the listeners / audience that are there for the book.
Well, I didn't want to do it, to be perfectly honest. I didn't want to do it because I thought, for a start, there were loads of actresses I didn't know at all, but I really liked, and I thought if I got them in a recording studio, I could become friends with them. But mysteriously, none of them were available. But obviously, my publishers and my agent said, look, you know, you are classically trained. But it's quite a weird experience because it's just you and the producer, and you are in the booth, and the producer's the other side, and it's a lovely guy, David, but his job is simply to make sure that you don't fluff, you don't speed up where you shouldn't, that you don't cough or something. So he's not, I mean, he is listening to the story, but there are some bits in the book, as you will know, which are quite embarrassing to read aloud. So it's my fault, I wrote them. But yeah, but then I'd look up and the producer was just sitting there absolutely immobile. So it wasn't like he was going, oh, blimey, you know, at the end of any particular sequence. But it's, yeah, this sounds really, you know, like, I know it's not a massive job, but it's really tiring. It's been 3 days just reading for some reason. I didn't want to talk at all to anybody after that. But, you know, it was nice I could do it. It was nice I could do it because I did, you know, when it came to the second one, they all just went, yeah, you might as well. But, yeah, well, actually what it does help with is I have a particular phobia in my writing about repetition. Yeah. And actually I read aloud everything I write now anyway. Yeah. I just always have, especially for dialogue, but I read it all aloud because I don't want to come across something that repeats something that was 2 paragraphs ago, or, you know, use a different word. There's loads, you know, there's a whole dictionary full. So find another word to explain something. And reading aloud, occasionally I would come to bits and think, yeah, you didn't spot that. I mean, I don't think anyone else would. I hope they wouldn't. They shouldn't be thinking about that. But it's my thing. And when I'm reading aloud now, when I'm, you know, working on this book, I just read everything to make sure that it doesn't have that, you know, oh, I think we said this a different way before. So yeah, I'm my own editor at that point, long before it gets in front of anyone else. Yeah.
And one of the other things that you've done in your long-standing career, which is if you put it on a pedestal with Blue Peter, we'll put it underneath that. What was it like? And I won't pronounce the name of the character because in my entire life I've never been able to pronounce it. What was it like appearing in a story on the Doctor Who with Tom Baker?
Yeah, it was really fun. Princess Tika. Yeah, I mean, it was, you know, if I say it was a job, it was a job. You know, I went up for a part, I got it, and I thought, oh, good. You know, 4 episodes of Doctor Who, that's fun. And of course, you know, like Blue Peter, that was a program I'd been aware of on and off through my childhood, and it had kept going because, you know, I was in my 20s by then. I mean, it was really nice. I think one of the lovely things about it is that everybody in it took it properly seriously. You know, it is a children's program, and it tells stories that are quite, you know, far-fetched or whatever. But Tom Baker was a brilliant actor, you know, and he had the stripes from the RSC and the National and everything else in between, and he played that part as a character, which I think he was brilliant. And everybody in those particular episodes was exactly the same. I mean, obviously, out of rehearsal and off camera, they had some amazing stories and they would muck around brilliantly, but they had a real commitment to it as a job. So we all did, you know, and it was a really good director. And amazingly, Douglas Adams, who wrote Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, was our script editor. But it was, you know, it was both of those things. It was another gig, you know, good. That's another endorsement on my equity card. But it's also lovely to work with people who love the job they do and are really good at it. So, you know, it's a combination. And the fact that people still talk about it, you know, and occasionally I go to conventions and meet people who love Doctor Who are the loveliest bunch of people. I mean, they're far more knowledgeable than me, so I can't make claim to any big facts here. But they are really on it about, you know, who was the designer, who was doing the special effects, who was, you know, the whole story of it to them is meshed with the fact that it's also a television program, which is lovely.
And Doctor Who's one of those things. It's like I think Doctor Who and Blue Peter are, if you think about British made TV, and you think about the juggernauts that are still around, it's Doctor Who and Blue Peter, and rightly they've merged, they made documentaries about it and all sorts. But
Yeah.
Doctor Who's one of those things where if you appeared in it for like 1 second anyway, you can go to 100 conventions and everyone will know who you are, because even if you're in the background of a ballroom scene, people know who you are and they
Absolutely.
it's just incredible.
Oh, people who've been fully disguised as monsters or whatever are, you know, more than welcome at conventions. Yeah, so.
And do you reckon that when you speak to like when you go to these conventions and see these people, do you reckon that there's a crossover between you on Blue Peter and then you in Doctor Who? Do you reckon there's a large crossover that they both want to talk about both things, not just one?
Yes, and of course there was, you know, as you said, there was a crossover anyway. You know, the new Doctor Who was always announced on Blue Peter, and Peter Purves had been in it, and I'd been in it. So, and my dad ended up working in visual effects and working on Doctor Who, and then was interviewed on Blue Peter about it. So, yeah, the programs were side by side, and then Gethin did a program after I'd left Blue Peter about that crossover, you know, and how closely aligned the programs were. Yeah, so I suppose it's nice that those two are twinned because they are both still on air,
Yeah.
and again have that place in the firmament where nobody's going to say, I saw that program, I don't know why you were so mean about XYZ, you know, which documentary makers must get all the time. But if you just skated along the surface as an actress and presenter, people just go, hey, love that. So I live in a nice world.
Yeah, and we mentioned about how the crossover. One of my abiding memories of the crossover was the 50th anniversary. I remember watching the Blue Peter special because I think they made an exemption and aired it on the Saturday, but they aired it like early in the morning, so you were prepared and more excited for Doctor Who because you would watch them in the secrecy office gushing over it because Chris Johnson was a fan of
Right.
it. And then they went to Blue Peter whilst they had all the exclusive about the episode that you were about to watch that evening. And I think that worked really well because it's like people were getting really excited for an event through this juggernaut of a program which we
well that's the key to it, isn't it? Everybody working on both those programs were enthusiastic about what they did. You know, I've obviously, having had time on Blue Peter and Jigsaw, you know, I'm often called upon to sort of defend children's TV programs. It's not hard because the people who work on them are amazingly energetic and enthusiastic and love what they do, and that's, you know, they're nice people to be around.
And do you reckon that if because a lot of things now, especially in years, are being like revived or like adapted in a way that it's technically the same program but with slightly more modern features and renamed to energize it. Do you reckon that Jigsaw would still work today, or do you reckon that it would need to be like reformed to like adapt to an audience?
I suppose there's elements of it elsewhere. I mean, basically, it was a little puzzle program, you know, and the sketches were clues. Yeah, I mean, it was a time when you know the program maker, Clive Doig, who is a friend of mine, was fully thinking like an 8-year-old, you know. So he had that. It goes back to what I was saying earlier, that lovely elision of that sort of slightly chaotic feeling of, you know, how does the world work, and the order and structure of childhood, which is imposed by other people. And he really played with that. Sorry, but I don't think it needs to come back. I think we just don't want to lose that legacy. You know, I think it's really important that we still make children's programs here.
Yeah.
I think there are absolutely brilliant American children's TV programs. I mean, phenomenal. The standard is high. The scripts are extraordinary. And I happily let my kids watch, my grandchildren watch them. Sorry. But the British ones, you know, there's a whole generation of new program makers who want to make new programs. And I think we should just let them.
And one of the other things you worked on that is, I think, is in the list of most catchiest theme tunes, because once you sing it, it gets stuck in your head. What was it like being a voice on the amazing El Nombre?
Yeah, really fun. Really fun. Kate Robbins, Steve Steen, and Sophie Aldred and me being Mexican gerbils, playing number games. I mean, what's not to like? Oh, sorry, it's got bad. I think none of us really, if I'm honest, nailed the Mexican accent, but we did our best. It was really fun.
And do you reckon that? Do you think voice? Do you reckon that voice acting? Because do you reckon that voice acting gives you more of a wide range of skill as an actor rather than appearing on screen, because you can play about with voices and you can do a lot.
Yeah. You can be anyone. That's the thing, you know, and you can be pretty much any age. Yeah, and it's immensely fun, you know, if you're allowed to do it. There's something so playful about it. And in that number, the scripts were really nice. So, you know, it wasn't a question of let's just get through it. You know, it was proper.
Yeah.
And it had a purpose. But yeah, you know, I've done loads of voiceovers, and there is something very satisfying when you feel that your voice is communicating something that the whole of you feels, you know. And it's like, you know, it's like reading the book. You can only use that, but you have to think everything else. I mean, as you can, I use my hands all the time when I'm talking anyway. And I think it's great to have that particular capture, really, of that aspect of yourself to work with. You know, it's fine also because I couldn't dance to save my life, so you know, nobody's asking me to do that. But the voice stuff has always been, I've always really enjoyed it.
And because when you do the voice acting, do you feel that it's more intimate to like the audience because they're listening to your voice and they're trying, and that's all they're hearing? Do you reckon that makes it like more of a connection? So you connect to the audience a lot more because it's only via the voice.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it depends. To be honest, it depends what you're doing. You know, if you're doing a voiceover for an ad, it's meant to really hit home. It's not meant to, you know, it's not meant to be soothing. It's meant to deliver a message, pacily, fast, funny, light, whatever the direction is. But if you're doing something where, I mean, I did some readings for a lovely Radio 3 program called Words and Music recently, and it was about a dozen different bits of text, and just the biggest treat to do that. They were all different, obviously, but yeah, that is when, you know, you feel you've been given a prize, because you just think this is such a lovely thing to do, and it's so amazing to try and find, you know, the different beats between them, the different moods. You know, they're little bits of text or poems, but yeah. So yeah, if you're allowed to do it, not everyone gets the chance, but if you're allowed to do it, it's lovely to see how that feels when it works.
Yeah, and one of the things you've appeared in is a program that if you misspell it, you could think it's a completely different type of program, which which people are taking many directions. But what was it like appearing in 2 episodes of the brilliant Waking the Dead?
Waking the Dead. Waking the Dead. Now it came about because I lived next door to the director, so that's handy. And obviously, I was playing, a journalist on that, so it wasn't like it was, a big scary scene, because it was a really good series, that wasn't it? It was really good fun. But yeah, I did mean, the usual thing, going on location, which is always great because there's always really good food, and filming in great locations. We were right by, it was Westminster Bridge or Lambeth Bridge, one of them anyway. Yeah, I mean, it's any job where you get to watch amazing actors at work is a privilege, and they were really lovely. So I don't think I got it purely because I lived next door to him, mind you. Luckily, he thought I could do it as well.
Yeah,
But it was a quicker way to get to the audition.
yeah, you can hitch your lift with him; he'll take you there.
Yeah.
And I think that because of walking the dead. I think that's the title of the other program. I think that's what's really fascinating about Waking Dead. If someone accidentally misspells Waking, accidentally put Walking, thinking, I didn't know Sue Johnson was fighting some zombies.
Exactly. Yeah.
It'll be a massive.
No, the Walking Dead. That's the other one. Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be shocking to them. And for anyone that's got to this point in the interview and are like, wow, this is amazing. What advice would you give anyone that's aspiring? I think I'm gonna use that. Aspiring to be a Boy Peter presenter. What advice would you give someone that wants to be specifically a Boy Peter presenter?
Gosh, well, there's not many of them, so maybe broaden the field a bit first. Maybe look at other programs which you really like, and apply to those too. I mean, I think quite a lot of Blue Peter presenters got the gig because they asked to audition, and you have to wait till somebody's leaving. Obviously, they're not going to bunch up a dozen of you on the sofa, but tenacity is really key. Tenacity and honing it and making sure, I suppose, that you want to be there because you love the program as well as you want it to reflect who you are. It has to be both, I think, because it's really demanding, and it's, I'm talking about it now, and I left to have Jack, and he's 36. So, the fact that this program has this immense ownership, without being too about it, you do have something of a responsibility towards the viewers, and so it isn't just a job. Actually, of all the things I've done, it's the least where, oh yeah, I just turn up for work. I think, especially in my case, and certainly with the people I worked with, who we all became friends, and that's luck, because effectively it is just a job. But because we did all become friends, and because we all felt that sense of legacy, I guess, none of us have ever minded either talking about the program, being associated with it, asking questions about what's happening to it every time there's a change or a new person, because we genuinely felt connected to it. So although I hadn't watched it routinely through my childhood, and although when I was first suggested that I go and audition to be a presenter, and I thought, well, that's not my calling, I did feel when I got in the studio that real connection to it. And I think that's really important, because otherwise it is just a job, and it's a great one, but you may not feel as invested in its future as the rest of us do. But there are plenty of other programs. And of course, now you can kind of make your own, so if you want to get there, if that's your ultimate ambition, then make your programs, your YouTube or whatever, with that in mind. Be that person. Let them see you. And then send in your tapes or whatever the equivalent is, forward your YouTube, send the link. But I don't know if I'd say, yeah, if that's all you want to do, just go for that. Because I don't want anyone to close their eyes to what might happen along the way. You know, whatever your ambitions are, you may find you get pleasantly and rather wonderfully derailed by something else. And, you know, it's kind of what happened to me. I thought I had a straight through line to an acting career, and that's all I was ever going to do. And then along the way, something else comes along and says, okay, try this. And it turns out to be the best.
Yeah.
So, yeah, by all means, walk along that road towards an ultimate goal, but not in blinkers. Keep everything alive to what other possibilities there might be, because the world is a wonderfully big and busy place, and there may be loads of other spaces that you can fit into, not just that one.
Yeah. And you mentioned there about when you film these things, send them in. Ironically, I think I'm going to use that word correctly. I saw a clip recently of the backstage. I think it was at BBC News. They still use tapes. And no one knows why, but they still copy one thing onto one tape to another to play it in. So someone out there is going, I've got this VHS tape, do you want it? And the BBC like, oh, yeah, we'll have it. And it is just like really fascinating to think that there is still someone out there making 4K or whatever the best quality is on a VHS tape.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I think that's lovely that people want to investigate all the ways of communicating. That's all this is, you know, ultimately. It's just ways of communication. So the fact that people are just going, no, there's not just one way is great, isn't it?
And because you've had such a wide career, and I ask this to a lot of people because it's a good judgment of character. And are you the type of person that when it gets shown on TV, anything you've done or gets repeated, do you sit down and watch it, or do you do the opposite, just run for the hills and until it's all over, then you don't have to see yourself back on TV?
It's a question of, I don't avoid it, but I don't make a date to see it. No, I don't. And that's not, I mean, I've always found myself totally fascinating on camera, to be perfectly honest. You know, it's not a question of, oh my goodness, I can't believe that's me. You know, the first thing I did when I left Central was Jackanory Playhouse. And, you know, that was a little TV play. And I'd never been in a TV studio before. So when the camera was on me and you can see it on the monitor, it's like, wow, I didn't want to run away. I mean, it's a sort of translation of yourself, because obviously the camera slightly reverses you anyway. But neither really. But then sometimes the things pop up, you know, with Blue Peter, actually with quite a lot of stuff. You know, somebody will post a little thing, and I always watch those. I'm really fascinated by them. Really fascinated to see little me doing stuff. Yeah. So no, neither.
And I think because of Blue Peter's legacy, I think what works really well at the moment is BBC 4 every so often re-airs. They have like sometimes on a Sunday they do a slot of like children's programs that you wouldn't have expected to re-air, and then you just sit there and go, oh, it's amazing, and then you and do you reckon that helps broaden the newer audiences, that like newer generation going, this is what used to be on, and this is what was really good, and then it's easy for them, for like a parent, for instance, to compare like their programs to what the children are watching now?
I don't think we need to. I think everybody discovers things that they think nobody's ever seen before, and quite often they have, but it's a different way of seeing. So I wouldn't want anyone to feel stuck, you know. But I also, as I've said, I don't want anyone to ignore the legacy of things. We are all the product of the things we saw before. So you can acknowledge it and you can exploit it if you like, and you can certainly steal from it, which people do. But I don't think we should be doomed to just repeat it, because why? You know, the world shifts, and we are privileged enough to be able to shift with it. And I think stay curious, you know, keep watching those things, see what they did right. See, you know, some of the most innovative programs, especially in the 70s and 80s, have set the tone for sure for a lot of what's come next, a lot. But, you know, other things, they don't invade, they just come in, they just become part of the fabric. So I think, short answer, there's room for everyone, but don't feel that you have to just go back and pay your dues to something that had its time, which informs what we do now, but isn't the same. It's not the same.
Yeah, and with I don't know what's quite interesting when you look at these old programs, like for instance Play School, you can see how that's influenced other TV programs
Oh yeah.
because the second world's this is my favorite fact of all time. The second world's longest running TV program is the Australian version of Play School. That's like 50. I think it's 55 years old.
Well,
I think that came about a similar time to the UK version, but outlived it because of it being such a good concept, and that's what Blue Peter does. Because both programs have adapted to where the audience are now, but have also stayed true to what the original intent of the program was, which is to educate and entertain,
yeah,
and broaden the horizons and learn new things.
absolutely. And nobody wants to be force-fed stuff. Nobody wants to be sat down and said, I'll test you at the end of this. And in a magazine program, especially, hopefully there's something you like. You might like the overall feel of the rest of it, but you won't necessarily be as interested. But yeah, again, a program like Play School set the tone for how you do programs for little ones, because up until then it's just been kind of listen with Mother and Andy Pandy, it's fine. But it did bring a kind of casualness to it. I think that was the transition, really, that in the 50s and 60s, although a lot of program makers, particularly the documentary and drama makers, were exploring a medium which was intensely new, there was also a way where people were slightly precious about it. You had to sort of dress up and speak right and, adhere to certain, what were called then, values. But then programs like Play School, and actually Blue Peter came in and went, no, I'll show you how the world actually is. I mean, after all, in Blue Peter, although it wasn't in any way a flag-waving exercise, there was no demarcation between what the female and male presenters did. We just did stuff, so sometimes the men helped the baby or did the cooking. I mean, even saying that sounds now alarmingly old-fashioned because, a whole new generation will go, yeah, of course. But it was new then. It was new. And it wasn't about making somebody aware of it by beating them over the head. It was just a constant, oh yeah, I realize, yeah, Janet or Karen or Sarah did that without necessarily thinking, shouldn't the boys have done it? But more thinking, then maybe I could.
Yeah. And as we approach the finishing line of this amazing interview, as I keep on saying, I've not yet swallowed that thesaurus or dictionary, so the word will still be planted where they are. I'm just gnawing at the letter at the small letter A at the moment. I'm just gnawing at the corner. Was there a moment when you went to do these challenges and went to do these on location, was there a moment where you were scared to do them, and then after doing them going, oh, I actually enjoyed that, but wouldn't do it again, but you actually enjoyed it in the moment?
The moments I was scared was all the time, especially with the parachuting. I never enjoyed it. I mean, I wouldn't, I did have free will. I could have said no, particularly after I broke my pelvis. I didn't have to go back. There was nothing in my contract. But for me, it was an amazing thing to do because it was the least likely thing to do. And anyone who knew me would have said that me and anything like that would have been poles apart.
Yeah.
And I think that shows, it wasn't natural. But on the other hand, what an amazing thing to do something that makes you feel that scared, and to do it and kind of survive it. So I can't say that it was massive. I love the people I was working with. The RAF Falcons, who's their display team, were really fun.
Yeah.
And having had a childhood in the services, it was really nice to spend time with another branch. Yeah. And they were really good. And, and they were very careful of my safety. But I never got past the point of feeling scared. And obviously I did 35 jumps in all, I think. But of course, over the course of 3 years, and over the course of that time, I would meet people who do that in a week if they can. I mean, they just, the idea of spreading that over 3 years would be anathema because they love it. and I like being around people who loved it. And I'm really glad I did it because, gosh, that was really out of character. But it wasn't a kind of, right, I'm going to carry on doing this when I leave, as I said at the beginning, and I'm careful to say all the time, I'm never doing it. But I'm really glad I did because, wow, me, that's amazing. But of course, there were other films that we did where, I might not have liked the idea of it at the time because it felt a bit sort of cold or high up or something. And at the end of it, you think, actually, yeah, wow, that's amazing. And I kind of stood on top of the world with that. That's really fun. So, yeah, I was more surprised than not, but usually, as I've said all the time, the key to it is that you're with people who love what they're doing. So whether it's jumping out of planes or, designing a garden or making whatever it is, they are the people who want to convey their enthusiasm. And we, as the presenters, were like everyone sort of brother or sister going, can I have a go? We weren't supposed to be experts, but we just have a go. So we went around the world having a go. It's quite a good job description.
Yeah, and I think that helps show that kids can do anything if you put your mind to it. If you didn't think you could hop out of a plane, well, have a go, and you might not be able to actually hop out of the plane, but you've at least gave it a go and thought, oh, that was an experience, and that's what helps.
Absolutely. If it's just getting to the top of the wall bars in the gym, do they still have wall bars in the gym? Anyway, if it's something that frightens you and you can be safely guided to do it anyway, that is a good thing.
Yeah. And do you reckon that it helps, Boy Peter, that all these people in high up the RAF were willing to allow the film crew in and allow you to try these experiences?
Yeah. Nobody ever said no. Nobody ever said no to Blue Peter in my day. I don't know how it's like, what it's like now, but in my day, they were never denied access anywhere.
Yeah. And I still think that's probably the same because I think only Blue Peter can have two people strapped to an aeroplane that they're trying to pass a baton as they're spinning upside down, going, what if I drop this baton? Because that's what I always thought. When you watch it, you're thinking, I might just, if I was doing that, I'd probably drop the baton and we'll have to refilm it as we're flying in the air.
Absolutely. And sometimes we did. I mean, that's the thing. We weren't required to be experts.
Yeah.
We were just required to be enthusiasts.
Yeah. And so as we come towards as we come closer and closer to the finish line, is there one particular project that you've got coming up that you're excited for people to either see, hear, or look or read? Is there anything that you can say that you're excited for people to look forward to?
Well, there's a couple of things coming up which annoyingly I can't say at the moment, which is I hate it when people do that. Anyway, but what I can talk about is we're about to do another series of the podcast, which I feel really lucky I get to do that. It's really great. And at some point in the very near future, I'm promising my agent I'm going to finish the second draft of this book. So then it, hopefully it's on its way to being a bit closer to finishing. But I don't know. I mean, obviously I'd love to have Glibber. I know there's a couple of things I've done on Channel 5 which haven't aired yet. I've tried out quite a number of kitchen gadgets for them from the ages, and that should be on air quite soon. And I also talked about shopping in the past, which I've really enjoyed, shopping in the 70s and 80s. But I'm constantly taken by surprise with what I do. So I've never had a plan apart from that one thing, just be an actress. And I still am. And I got there, but I haven't finished that yet either. But I haven't got a big starry thing to announce to everybody. No, I'm just, constantly pleasantly surprised by the fact that people ask me to do anything at all.
Yeah, and you mentioned there about working with Channel 5 on Kitchen Gadgets. Are you by any chance, this is probably the worst joke I've ever made, are you by any chance making an air fryer program for Channel 5?
Not yet. I'm sure my time will come. Yeah, everybody else has, so it must be me soon.
Yeah, that is BBC Radio 5 Live's favourite joke. On the other podcast Must Watch, where two TV critics talk about TV, and the favourite thing is that everyone done it. Even Jamie Oliver for Channel 4's done it.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah.
They're a miracle. It's like the microwave. It's the modern equivalent
Yeah,
of
I
the
know.
microwave.
I haven't got one. So, but if I do a television program about one, maybe I'll get one. So I'm open to offers.
Yeah, and so where can people track you down to see more of your stuff? Do not give away your home address, but online, where can people find you to see what you're up to?
So just Google, I guess. I mean, the podcast is on what they call all the platforms, so I just Google stuff. I did have a website. I still have a website, but it's not the most fertile ground. And also I didn't really enjoy just curating stuff for the website. I'm much more, let's go and do something else instead. But at some point, I will make more noise about the next series of the podcast. And if the book gets published, touching wood here, I would obviously make a lot of noise about that. But apart from that, people don't have to look. I've lived in the same area for years, so if they want to find me, I'm usually walking the dog.
And so there you have it. Thank you for letting me interview you.
Pleasure. I'm sorry about having to run away to my kitchen in the middle.
That's all right.
The dog was really disconcerted actually, because she obviously thought it was time to go out, and I had to tell her it wasn't.
And so there we have it, another wonderful interview. And yes, if you've never seen any of my other interviews, what on earth are you doing? I've got 21 YouTube channels. You can see more of this face if you want to talk to yourself for an hour or two, or for years. I don't know how you spend your time. And so hopefully here's one I interviewed early returns with more Blue Peter presenters. And if you want to see another immediate interview with another Blue Peter presenter before this channel existed, and head over to the weird side, because I interviewed the wonderful Abby Cook, who is one of the newest Blue Peter presenters. I interviewed her a year ago, so you'll see me wearing a slightly, this isn't black, but you'll see me wearing a slightly shorter, not black suit. Apparently it's dark blue. I didn't know that. I thought it was black, and then I've got told that that's dark blue. Now I don't know what the difference between black and dark blue is. So that tie is definitely black, I assume. So who knows? Who knows what colour is supposed to be what colour? And so there you have it. Another wonderful interview. And that was an interview I conducted earlier.